Hello and welcome to Turning Lewks, a beauty and makeup podcast. I am your host, Darren Mew, and this is episode 9 or episode 2 of season 2, whatever you prefer. In this month's episode, we've got the lovely Santi on. Santi is a DIY fashionista, a model, performer, writer, the founder of Gender Swap, which is the first of its kind style outreach organization for trans and gender non-conforming people. It's all about being whoever and wearing whatever you like. Santi also performs as a drag thing on the King Spectrum as Pretty Boy, and we're going to hear all about their drag, their experience in makeup, their history in makeup, and what they think of makeup and how that kind of plays into gender expression, gender identity, and so much more in this episode. So, if that sounds good to you, please do carry on listening and let's get straight into this interview. But yeah, thank you for coming on. We kick things off right away. What's your history of makeup? 'Cause I know we've spoken before. You said that used to be a makeup artist.
Yes. That's actually what I went to school for 100 years ago. So I think it was 2007, I went to makeup school, and it was a really kind of snap decision that I made. And it was because I came to London and was really inspired by all the fashion and everything around me. And I was like, I'm going to go to makeup school and become a famous makeup artist. That was always my goal.
I love that. And when did that kind of change or your direction change around like outside of being part of the makeup kind of industry in that sense?
Yeah, it's so interesting. So, of course, I said I want to be a famous makeup artist. That was kind of like a fun dream. That's not necessarily what I guess I was working towards. It was more of just kind of a thing that I said. But when I finished makeup school, I actually jumped right away into doing makeup on a more grassroots level. So I was doing makeup for people at a like HIV clinic downtown in Vancouver, Canada, where I'm originally from. I was doing makeup for people who are experiencing homelessness and substance misuse. That's kind of how it started. And then I segued into working into retail makeup, always with some freelance bits on the side, but I worked for MAC for a really long time. OG Canadian brand, and NARS, Makeup Forever. And I actually worked at Harrods when I moved back to London. I worked at Mac and Harrods for a bit. And maybe that's where things started to shift, because at that point I had been doing makeup for about 5 years. And I was feeling like I was losing, I enjoyed more of the grassroots aspect of makeup. And I guess I just kind of got interested in other things. I was starting to kind of I went back to university basically and wanted to explore other things. And then I came around full circle to however many years later. I think I went to uni in 2012. By the time I finished my undergrad and my master's, it was like 2017, and then started Gender Swap, and then kind of circled back around and started implementing my makeup knowledge into supporting trans people. So I don't know if that answered your question. I just went around in a massive circle, but just to kind of give you an idea, it's kind of never been like a clean cut answer. I've kind of like weaved in and out of different things.
That's awesome. And I'd love to hear more about the like grassroots side. I think you were talking about like they're doing makeup for like HIV activists and things and homelessness people. Like, how did that come about and like what did that involve?
For me, I had a friend who was also, we went to makeup school together, and she was doing makeup, what's called on the downtown east side of Vancouver, which is kind of a specific area where lots of people who are experiencing homelessness and substance misuse kind of land, where a lot of the social housing projects and things like that are. And they needed more volunteers and more people to kind of, yeah, come on board. I've just always been interested in supporting people of that experience. And so, yeah, I just got her to give them my name. And so I got called in, and then I kind of, got in on a more ongoing basis. And things like the HIV clinic, the LGBTQ center, that kind of, I guess, through word of mouth, really, and just kind of through forming more connections. I was already starting to, I guess, yeah, form more connections within the community. And that kind of got me those jobs, I guess.
And was it like about like putting people in makeup to make them feel good about themselves and stuff while they were going through like lots of see big life experiences or life traumatic life things?
Definitely. And the thing is that just because you're homeless, or you're sleeping on the street, or you're going through something, that feeling, that pick me up of of being able to, get your face wash and to get makeup to feel like how you want to feel, like to feel like your best self. That doesn't stop at people who like have money and can go to the shop and buy makeup. That's just like a human experience, right? And it was really uplifting for a lot of people. It really propelled me forward to want to do more of that work, because things like makeup, like fashion, like hair, things like that, I think are sort of sometimes deemed as only attainable for people who have money, or among famous people. And it's a very like human kind of need and want. And yeah, so that definitely was something that was highly requested within those communities.
Then you started Gender Swap. Yeah, like talk me through how did that kind of start? What made you start that? Because you started it over while you've been in the UK as well, haven't you?
Yeah. So it's a really long story and I'm not going to get into it, but I've been in and out of the UK for like over a decade. And then I finally came back to the UK, which is probably already like my fifth time, by like 2016 to do my master's, and 2017 I finished. During my master's, I started Gender Swap, and it was just, I started it off as just a community clothes swap initiative. That's because I was really looking for a community to speak about clothes and style, to access clothes on a cheap basis. That was during sort of my gender woes and kind of having a change in wardrobe. Then from there, I started meeting up with people at these clothes swaps, and people started bringing their other requests to the table and just had just general questions. Oh, how do you style this? Oh, what makeup do you think I should wear with this? Oh, I love your eyeliner. I wish I knew how to apply eyeliner. And sort of I accumulated all of those kind of notes and all of those conversations. And I was doing style outreach for a long time. As you know, kind of Gender Swap, isn't just a clothes swap initiative now. In fact, we don't really do that now. It's a style outreach service for trans people, which basically supports trans and gender diverse people to access any form of style needs or expression needs, makeup, hair, well-being, skin, you name it. And I thought one day, I was like, wait a minute, I'm a makeup artist, so I should be bringing this perspective to the initiative. And with that, I started a couple makeup workshops. One of the first kind of OG ones was with MAC Cosmetics in Cardiff in Wales, where we supported a bunch of trans people there with a makeup lesson. And then we actually did a specific trans mask focused makeup lesson a couple years later at MAC on Carnaby Street. And I've also collaborated with Lush Cosmetics within that, and Jecca Black, of course, which is the trans inclusive makeup line now that is kind of on everyone's radar. So
It's really cool, and also it's so like you've done so much with it and stuff. And the clothes swaps kind of, you don't do that as much anymore now. It's more about that kind of like style side of things. Have you found that trans people, as they're on their kind of journey, need that kind of style support more so than I guess maybe a lot of say cis people?
yeah, I think style outreach is extremely important for trans people. Gender Swap is still, I guess, one of the only like full outreach orgs, which is kind of tackling every aspect of expression. For us, it's really difficult to find clothes that feel good, that fit right, to find an expression and a form of style that isn't one that necessarily aligns with normative or mainstream popular style images. We're always kind of going around trying to find, I guess, more than representation, but representation to start off with and reflections of ourselves. And we can't often find that. And what do? We kind of go back to our closet and think, how can I construct a sense of me that feels authentic when I step out onto this doorstep? And then, it kind of expands out towards that, like figuring out how we want people to interact with us. I mean, I can go on and on, but clothes are so significant and still something that's kind of underregarded. Like it's not something that maybe cis people think about in terms of, and that's why there's so little style resources for trans people still, right?
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, it's like you said, it's so important that trans people have that opportunity to kind of think about and reflect on those things, like, because it's a different way than like cis people do, and having that chance to explore it in different ways. And there's always those different kind of personal connections we all have with makeup and clothing and that kind of styling that, like you said, a lot of cis people don't have to think about in that way. Non-binary people, whether they want to wear makeup, not wear makeup, how they want to wear their makeup, do they want to express more feminine or not? Is that doesn't go their gender expression, or that gender expression might put them into danger, which a lot of things are like cis people don't actually have to think about. They can go about their lives and just do things, and it's not seen as radical as it is when it comes to a trans person doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also, for example, like the makeup workshops or the style workshops and the one that you attended, the makeup workshop last year, it's also just a space for people to explore. Let's just pick a random makeup counter. I won't name any names, but like if a trans person wants to go to a makeup counter and be like, what makeup can I use to make myself look more androgynous? Or I want I don't know, a makeup look that's more non-binary. I mean, I think for a lot of people still, they're like, like our company doesn't have the resources to support this request. And that's why I think initiatives like Gender Swap and like how so many people and different organizations in the UK are kind of like helping trans people. I think it's so important to create more of these spaces. So
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, like you're saying, that kind of a lot of brands, either you don't feel comfortable even asking the people that work behind the counter. The products they have no intention of ever being used that way. Of course, you can use makeup however you like, but if it's not being marketed or even shown to you in that way, so many brands still to this day, their marketing campaigns are just full of cis women wearing the makeup. There's no gender diversity or gender expression diversity in even how they market their own products. So that's from a starting point, trans people are already kind of pushed to the side. There's only very few brands that kind of are purposely inclusive when it comes to even accessing it or even thinking about going to access it because you don't see yourself reflected in.
yeah, definitely. And just on that note about what you were saying about, not knowing that, or necessarily the knowledge not being out there disseminated enough that you can actually use makeup however you like, that you don't need to use a blusher just for your cheeks and things like that. And that's also where Gender Swap / I come in, that I'm like, oh, hey, actually this eyeshadow, I use it on my lips, my eyes, and my face, and I'm going to show you how to do that, especially for people who are just starting off in a brand new expression. You don't have the money to go and just buy a whole new makeup kit, nor do you really need it, right?
And especially nowadays where we're constantly told with makeup that you have this specific thing for this thing, so you have to buy loads of different things, that actually you can use one product multiple ways. You can use an eyeliner as a brow pencil, as a lip liner, and to add freckles if you wanted to, as well as, it doesn't have to just be that one thing that we're kind of told it's meant to be for.
Yes, totally agree.
And you mentioned obviously earlier, kind of going back and forth a little bit, but you worked at Mac in Canada and then you worked Mac in the UK. What was the difference between the two? Was it a cool experience working for Mac in Canada in like one of the original places where obviously, like you said, it's where it's from. But yeah, how was it working there versus like working here? And how's your experience kind of working in retail makeup in general?
Wow, yeah, big question. I'm like, oh, where do I start? Working for Mac back in the day in Canada, I have to say was really exciting. I don't know how it is now, but back in the day in Canada, like you really had to work to get a permanent position at Mac. So all you could do was like temp for holidays, be on call for basically holidays. And so I did that for a bit, and I was still working at like NARS and Makeup Forever and kind of trying to get in and kept visiting the Mac counter and hanging out and making friends and just really adamant about getting in until there was finally like a permanent part-time position. And I got the job, long story short. And it was really exciting because at that time it was still kind of like anything goes. It still had, I mean, it was early 2000s, but it still had that like 90s kind of like all genders, they're so again like all genders, all races, all ages, like Viva Glam was really big, like you could wear what you want. Of course there was guided looks that were suggested that you should wear just to promote the products, but that could be kind of like, that's up to your interpretation, however you wanted to wear them. It was really exciting. I loved going to work. The music was blasting, doing makeovers like consistently throughout the day. Then things slowly started to shift. I can't remember now if it was during the time that MAC Cosmetics got bought out by Estee Lauder that things started to change and became more standardized. It was still fun, but there was a lot more standardized processes in place. Like you couldn't just sort of do your own thing and wear whatever you wanted. You still could, but there was a bit more rules. I was on my way to going to London anyways, because I was really gearing up to get there. And I got to London and got the job at Harrods before I even got to London, did like a couple phone interviews, got there. And of course, Harrods is quite like a prestigious place. You know, it's not necessarily anything goes, but I do have to say that at the Mac counter, it was a little kind of safe haven. A lot of queers were still working there. It was still kind of like you could really express yourself with more limitations than in Canada. And I honestly, I made the friends that I still have today, and that was like over 10 years ago now. I still have them from the Mac counter. Like there's quite a few people that we still hang out and keep in touch with. And one of them actually like lives down the street from me. So I have to say it's some of the best times of my life, but then as the process got more standardized, as there was more rules in place, things like you couldn't dye your hair certain colors and things like that, I have to say I kind of was like, I'm done. And I was really wanting to be like a regional trainer and build up, but there was a lot of barriers basically. And it was just, and I was like, if I can't like be a regional trainer and go around and teach people how to do makeup, then I think kind of like my work is done here sort of thing. So I have to be honest, and by the end of it, I think it was kind of like a wah wah moment. And that's when I completely segued and went to university and studied international relations. So I kind of did like a massive, a massive like 360 and did something. Yeah. Yeah. It was super fun and exciting until it wasn't anymore, in short.
I feel like that's like most jobs though, isn't it? Like you're there for a while, and like you said, if you can't progress, it once you know you can't progress somewhere, you kind of switch out because you're like, okay, well, this is where I want to be. If I'm not going to get there here, I'm switching out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you've also then worked with Mac through gender swap as well, like you said in Cardiff, in Carnaby Street. How's that also kind of working as like a almost a consultant or like collaborating rather than actually working for them?
I loved it. I mean, I love that kind of everything I've done in my life related to outreach and style and makeup outreach has always done like again, it's always been a full circle moment. I think it's been really interesting to have a different angle. Yeah, more of a consultancy approach, maybe more like events management and outreach management kind of thing. For me, it was really hard not to jump in and be like, oh, well, what about this color? And would you use an NW over an NC? Because I mean, by the end of my Mac journey, like I could literally look at a lipstick from across the room and be like, oh yeah, that's Ruby Woo or whatever. And even now I still, for the most part, can be like, oh, don't use Strut eyebrow pencil. It's too red. Don't like, it's so embedded. And then we had so much training. It became my whole world. So in that sense, I almost found it difficult to step into my other role, but also exciting and fun that I still had that knowledge that I could really like connect with the people at Mac for these gender swap events in a way that felt like it was really intentional because I knew so much about the product and so much about their ways of working and things like that.
Yeah, I think you can always tell someone's a Mac employee by their knowledge of NC this and blah blah, or specific eyeshadow shades. That a lot of like YouTubers I watch, like the Chapman sisters, who are always like, oh, there's this color I'm using, but it's very similar to blah blah from Mac. Like you can tell it's always embedded in people's minds.
Yeah, definitely. I think I have. I mean, even now I do some modeling, and if like the makeup artist is using Mac on me, I'm like, oh, is it that product? Is it this? And they're like, how do you know?
And obviously now you started, well, more recently you started doing drag as well. When did that like start, and like what made you want to get into it?
Yeah, I recently started drag. I've only been doing drag for not even 2 years yet, I think. 2 years at the end of this year, this summer. I have always gone to drag shows and I love drag and always have been a spectator. And then as I've been going to these shows, as I've been watching things on TV, it's kind of like been brewing, like, oh, I want to do something. My qualm, I guess, was always that I didn't want to be a queen or a king. And I wanted to represent something in between and something that felt still authentic to me as Santi, but also something that was translatable to a specific, I don't know, gender experience. So my drag name is, I came up with Pre-T Boy because my nickname's Pretty Boy, and Pre-T Boy to kind of stan all the pre-T boys out there. So I kind of wanted to represent the feminine trans masc people out there that don't get a lot of airtime. I got into it by entering into Top of the Slops season 1 drag competition, and I thought I would just give it a go. And that was my second time ever doing drag. My debut was at I think it was called No Cis Tears, put on also by the same production company, basically. And so I just, yeah, went and tried out, and I got enough votes to get voted into the competition. So, and then from there went on to do not another drag competition and place third. So last year. So I'm really proud of myself for that. And definitely my makeup skills and my makeup visions were really, I've channeled them through Pre-T-Boy as well, as a trans mask who wears loads of makeup.
Yeah, I was like last week when I was like thinking about like what I was going to talk about this, it dawned on me the like double meaning of your name, and I was like, when I sat there, I was like, oh my God, that's like it's also so smart as well. I was like, that's like the
Right.
coolest name I think ever. Yeah, it was just, I was like, wow. And yeah, like, I love that on your bio, it's like I think it's drag thing on the king spectrum. And
Yeah.
I love that too, that kind of, yeah, just the way you described that as well was really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I think my mission is to confuse people, because I am like Pre-T-Boy is a feminine trans mask, but they're also a gay boy, they're also a femme boy. They also don't really know what kind of boy they are. Sometimes they're not a boy at all. It's kind of like straddling all of those in betweens that's hard to put language to, but is made sense through visual language like makeup and fashion. In
And I also, it's like one, that's like such an experience a lot of trans people face is kind of figuring out where they fit in. Like you said, language can be so boxing in. So wanting to be all of those things, but they're not really having the language for it or not feeling enough to be for it. It's nice to see that there's like someone artistically playing with that, in a way that like is kind of almost telling people like it's okay to not know specifics. You can just kind of float around all of these ideas, and that's fine too.
Yeah, and also that floating around, it can be specific. It is like the ultimate non-binary experience. And I really hope that Pre-T-Boy kind of relates to all kind of genders or sexualities, can kind of look at Pre-T-Boy and see like at least a fragment of themselves in them.
And I guess also for you in a sense, it's great because you can be like, I can one day be a super femme drag queen presenting and then dragging. You can do whatever you like, and your expressions are kind of endless then there as well.
Yeah, defo. I love that freedom for sure.
And one question that I always ask everyone as well is, what was the first makeup item you ever bought?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I can't think of the first makeup item I ever bought, but I can remember the first makeup item that was ever bought for me. And it was one of the first ever MAC launches of the roll out brush kit that my mom got me for Christmas. And then she got me the singular eyeshadows, and I think it was orange, like it was just called the color orange eyeshadow, carbon, the black one, and the gold one, and all of a sudden I'm forgetting its name. And then the only other makeup item that I remember really wanting, that I guess my mom bought for me but I picked out, was a kind of like baby eggshell blue liquid liner that you put on with like a sponge tip, super like retro. And I actually wrote a fictional story about a non-binary character whose first attempt at kind of bending the binary was through using this blue liquid liner. Kind of a reflection, I guess, maybe of my own experiences. But I feel like those are the only, I feel like we're going to end this conversation and I'm going to go away and in 2 hours be like, oh, I remember. But that's all that comes to mind.
So you were fully destined to be a Mac queer from the get-go then.
Literally, because I got that set when I was like, I don't know, maybe 14, like really old, because I'm kind of old. So like that's a really, I think it was literally one of the first brush kits that Mac ever came out with.
Wow, some natural hair and all.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Wow. Do you still have any of those brushes now?
I do. And my favorite one, which I literally have like 9 of, is the 211 brush. Do you know the 211?
Yeah, yeah,
The,
yeah.
the really fluffy white, like blending brush. And to this day, I still use that brush for everything and still feature it in like all of my makeup workshops. And if people don't buy MAC, then just like get a brush that looks like it and does its job.
I love it. And is that story that you wrote about the non-binary person with the blue liquid shadow, is that available out there anywhere or?
Yeah, it is. It's actually published on Transmuted Zine. but they have an online platform. So you can actually go to their website and click on stories, and then click on the short story that's called Skins. Um, I can't remember their website, but if you go to transmuted, trans.muted on Instagram and go into the link tree in their bio, you can find it. And it's also in my bio link on Instagram at Santi Baby, SantiBabi.
I will try to remember to link that in the description of this
Oh,
episode
cool.
too. So it should be down below as well with all your social links as well. One question I also did really want to ask was, how have you found personally yourself, like experimenting with makeup and your like gender identity over the years? How have you found that? Like, has it been a like harmonious kind of experience? Have you found it like sometimes more like traumatic? Like, how's that kind of like come together?
Yeah, it definitely hasn't been a harmonious experience. I would say that when I was a makeup artist, I wasn't out yet. And I presented quite hyper feminine. And I love, like, I would do layers and layers of makeup, like layers of lashes and smoky eyes and glitter and like, Studio Fix foundation and like, really heavy coverage. And I loved it at the time. And then I slowly felt a shift. And that's maybe when I was figuring out, my place in the world and my gender. Actually, it was my sexuality first that I grappled with, which I only realized in retrospect that it was my gender I was confused about, but I got confused about everything. But I started wearing a lot of like red eyeshadow, which I still do sometimes, but like on the inner corner, I basically inverted or subverted all of my like smoky eyes into the opposite direction. So you know how like traditional smoky eye, you'd had to do like a cat eye and dark on the outside and light on the inside. And I would flip it and do like dark on the inside. So it had a bit of like a demonic eye, and then like, kind of played around with color in different ways and started blanking out my brows with concealer. And that was quite early on. That was like, over a decade ago now. Um, and then I started having, like I said, gender woes probably around 2015, 2016, and felt like makeup was hindering my expression because I wanted to be more masculine, but didn't really know how to go about that. Mainly, I was doing thicker brows and maybe some mascara only because I was trying to like darken my eyes and was still figuring out how to go about that. And then I kind of didn't wear makeup for much at all around maybe 2017, 2018. It was maybe during the pandemic that I started playing around with makeup again. I was doing a lot of Instagram lives where I started teaching people how to pencil in sideburns and mustache, how to darken your brows, how to use highlighter. I was doing a series of kind of online workshops when we were all on lockdown. And then I started kind of entering into my pretty boy era, you'd say, and kind of like embracing that. And all of a sudden I was like, wait, first of all, I realized that I'm not necessarily like trans masculine in the traditional sense. And I would say I'm like trans mask adjacent. I don't even really use that term for myself. I'm genderqueer. But when I came to that realization, it's like all of a sudden my makeup exploration changed again. It was a lot of fake freckles, playing around with brows and eyeshadow color. Now I'm wearing like glittery lip gloss sometimes, tons of highlighter on my cheeks. Yeah, and maybe playing around in more bendy things. So for example, like cutting, like doing brow slits, but with concealer. Um, for example, and with pre-T-boy, I do like fake eyebrow gems and like eyebrow piercings. And I view that as a part of makeup. So I definitely went from like hyper feminine to kind of masculine to like no makeup to kind of trying a bit of makeup on again to now wearing quite a bit of makeup, but like in a gay fruity femboy way. It's very confusing, but like that's kind of the words I use for myself, not that that is a descriptor for how anybody who identifies as that should wear their makeup, but yeah, for me personally.
I love that though, and I feel like that's one thing that queer people are really good at doing is kind of subverting traditional beauty norms. And it sounds like that's what you were really doing, like the early ages, kind of like like you're saying with the smoky eye and stuff like that, like doing it in a different way. It's kind of like subverting those beauty norms, so kind of as like a fu at the kind of world for putting those things onto you slash us.
Yeah, definitely. And actually I feel like I need to add what's interesting about my entire makeup journey from the get-go is when I told people back in 2007 that I was going to makeup school, everyone was like, "Oh, really? You never wear makeup though." And I actually was never allowed to wear makeup as a kid, as a teenager or whatever. I grew up in a strict home, blah, blah, blah. And only when I like moved out of the house did I start kind of wearing makeup, but barely, like maybe a little bit, and then went to makeup school. And then like here I am on this like wild makeup journey that I never saw possible. And maybe I just wanted to add quick too, which I forgot to mention earlier, which ties in, is that I do makeup now for trans women in prisons. And that also is kind of ties into this because a lot of the women that I'm working with in these prisons, it's their first time like wearing makeup, and it's their first time like figuring out what this all feels like. And the message that I always give them, and what's really important, is to say, like, there's no kind of end goal with this. And just because in the media women are portrayed as wearing X amount of makeup, it doesn't mean you have to. You can just do like a gelled brow and a bit of like blusher if that's what feels good for you. And so I kind of always bring that back to myself to say, yeah, I'm masked, but I can wear makeup, or I don't have to, or whatever. It like, I just want to tell everybody it really just doesn't matter, you know?
How is that like doing the like going to prisons and doing like makeup for trans women in prisons is like I guess also because they probably don't have the resources or all the resources that we have out in the outside world as well. Yeah, what's that kind of experience like?
Yeah, they don't have any resources. It honestly, it's really amazing because we get to have conversations that aren't possible when I'm not there. A lot of them also are still figuring out maybe their gender. Maybe some people are non-binary. They're trying to figure it out. And the only language we have to figure that out together is through our 2-hour makeup sessions. What feels good? What do you like on? What kind of colors appeal to you? Sometimes, I think, like I said before, at the beginning of our conversation, that no matter what background you're from, what experience you have, what you've done in life, you deserve to access beauty and well-being and things that make you feel good. And that also doesn't stop at prisons, right? So it's been a really, again, exciting and rewarding experience, and I'm so glad that I have this partnership to support people in prison. So
It also says that so much to the power of makeup as well. Like while you're in there for that 2 hour session, exploring or playing with makeup with these people, that gives them that opportunity to think and stop and experiment and about their identities and stuff too. But that kind of makeup gives them that kind of tool or time to do that as well.
yeah, absolutely. I think that exactly like I said, it's just this language that we have. And it's, when I'm not there, they don't have all of the makeup to experiment with and all of that. But gender swap followers have been so generous, and same with Jecca Black. Shout out to Jecca Black for like sponsoring a lot of these workshops and sending lots of makeup donations and things like that. It's like really made a really positive impact in their lives.
And that's amazing as well. It's just like as well, like obviously, I think a lot of times people and we all think of makeup as quite like a frivolous thing, but actually there's so much power in what you're doing and the tools and using the tools of makeup as well.
Yeah, thank you. I think yeah, definitely there's so much power, and we can harness so much of our own inner power through makeup and through style. And I don't think it should ever be seen as like too materialistic or too self-involved or too frivolous. Like, these are things that bring us joy, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all. And I think on that note, I think that will kind of we'll stop the conversation there. Cool. No, thank you so much for that though.
Thank you for having me. It's been so nice chatting with you.
Now, that was a lovely conversation I just had with Santi. I hope you all enjoyed it too. They are a lovely human being, so make sure to go follow him on social media at Santi Baby on Instagram and all the other platforms that they mentioned just a minute ago. Now, let's get into our usual beauty news segment. Now, the first news I wanted to talk about, because I found it hilarious when I was reading about it this morning, there's this new kind of booming business within beauty, and it's around children and children buying makeup. This has been a thing that's been around for ages. Children have always bought makeup, but I think because of the rise in social media, it's happening more so now, and there's more of a actual demographic for it now than ever. This kind of, in inverted commas, Sephora Kids is what it's kind of been dubbed as. This has kind of come about because of TikTokers sharing content around this kind of audience of tweens in beauty retail spaces, whether that be Sephora or Ulta Beauty. Obviously, this is very American focused, flooding stores, being really rude to customers, being rude to shopper staff, being rude to the environment that they're in, and buying products that they have no business in needing to buy. For instance, you've got tweens buying products that have like exfoliating acids in them, retinoid, these pricey moisturizers and toners as well that are designed to minimize the effects of aging when they're tweens, they're still growing, all because of what they're seeing older generations or people who are 5 to 10 years older than them buying and talking about online. Drunk Elephant is a brand that these young tweens are buying a lot of. They describe themselves as clean beauty, but a lot of their products are actually aimed at older people in the sense of like actual adults. They're not someone who would really be recommended for kids. They have actually, since this whole big trend has come up, had to do some explaining on Instagram and pinpointing products that the young people can or could use, or that they recommend for kids, because what kids were buying wasn't necessarily what they should be buying. Now, this isn't just happening in stores in person, but it's also happening online, and it's creating a huge increase in sales. Now, what does this mean for beauty and cosmetics and how a lot of these brands are going to go in advertising their products and stuff? Yet to be seen, but I'm sure it's going to be something that we will see a lot of. It's very interesting that these young people are being impacted by what they're seeing online and wanting to buy these products that are typically aimed at older generations. And it's kind of scary too. Let's be real. Young people don't need to be using retinoids and all these things while they still, when you're going through puberty and you're all greasy and oily in all your skin, like actually what you need is the bare minimum, something lovely and maybe hydrating, and that's it. And also a lot of times something cheap. These kids are going for expensive things that I still can't even afford at my grown age. Now, I'm not a dermatologist, so I can't say if they should or shouldn't be, but I've got a sneaking suspicion that they probably shouldn't be using it, nor do they need to be using it. The next interesting story that I saw is that Boots, which is a UK beauty health retailer, has revealed their top trends for 2023. Now, I know last month I did a whole episode on trends for this year and last year, but it's really interesting to see what was the most searched, what was the most sought after products according to one of the biggest beauty retail spaces within the UK. Mascara was at the top of the search in makeup terms on boots.com, followed by concealer and foundation. The latter almost doubled year on year. So more and more people are searching for concealer and foundation year on year, which is interesting. I think that's because more and more foundations and concealers are constantly coming out and a lot of things are being discontinued. Let's be real, a lot of brands are just repackaging older products to make them more relevant again. But that means people are constantly having to switch up and change up what they were using before. Interesting that mascara is at the top of the search term. I think we've seen over the last few years lots of mascaras going viral for good or bad reasons, or scandals around mascaras, which then make people want to buy them. Following on to this like line of thought, Maybelline's viral lash sensation Sky High mascara was a best-selling self-selection makeup at Boots by volume for the second year in a row. So clearly mascara is a big thing within UK beauty. And then the most searched for cosmetics on boots.com was e.l.f.'s Halo Go liquid filter, which is obviously the dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury flawless filter. So again, dupes. e.l.f. is really known for doing their dupes, doing them well, for whatever reason, how you think that's them playing it into their marketing so that they can up the prices of all their products. So why instead of being the cheap brand that they were, when the dupe brands are much more expensive, so they can up their prices of those products so they're still cheaper than the high end one, but they're more expensive than they were originally. That is a theory that's why e.l.f. dupe a lot, is so they can up their prices. One of the best-selling premium cosmetics at Boots, with sales up by 46%, was Benefit's Rose Tinted Lip and Cheek Stain, which is like a cult classic. That's not a new product, but it's interesting to see that kind of difference between the online world and the in-person in-store shoppers who are still buying tinted lip and cheek stains from a brand that's had it for years and years and years, not going to a newer brand for it or a newer product for it from a brand. They're going to one of the traditional ones that have been doing it for years. Interesting to see. And it makes me more interested and more inclined to look into what in-person shoppers are buying versus what we're constantly told is going viral online, if that makes sense, which I hope it does. And that's it for our new stories this month. If you like this episode, don't forget to like it, share it, follow us on Instagram, follow us on the podcast, and make sure you are subscribed. Did I say that already? I think I did. But make sure you subscribe for next month's episode, and I will look forward to seeing you then. Have a good month. Bye.